Welcome to Culture Connect. I'm Audrey, and I have a very special guest this evening, a lifelong friend and a lifelong artist, Judy Gittelsohn. Welcome, Judy.
Thank you, Audrey.
I'm so excited, and as you were saying right before we started, you know, I was all sparkly and kind of, you know, it's wonderful to be able to talk about you, since I've known you my whole life almost, as a painter. And you started painting when you were how old?
Well, a kid. I mean, I don't exactly have a year I remember, but I drew all the time and painted, and so, you know, as a kid.
As a kid.
Yeah.
And your mom was a painter.
Right.
So you always had paints and canvas.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you were in college, you started studying architecture, and then how did you end up going for painting?
Well, let me do the lead into being an architect. When I was a kid, I really wanted to be a hippie. And so I drew these hippie families, and I drew their floor plan and how they lived in this house. And I was always Mulliganiana, and I was always the fifth or sixth child out of 7, and we all had long curly hair, and we lived in one room. And that, I just kept doing that, and I had reams of notebooks of these floor plans of these families, and then I would do the town, and then I would do the farm and the plot of land, and then I got into looking at floor plans. So then I went to the University of Oregon Architecture School, and I still had sort of a dalliance with being artistic and creative, and a friend came and said, you know, you really have to do art. I had small figurines all around my whole room, all around the room, and they were going, this is art. So I applied to CalArts in Southern California and got accepted, and headed down there and stopped in San Francisco and sort of stayed.
So were you a hippie in San Francisco?
I wasn't, but the first night I was here with my friend Charlie, we met this guy who goes, I am God. And so that was pretty close. I mean, you can't get much closer than meeting God your first night in San Francisco. So.
And an appropriate place to meet God.
Right.
And then when you were at the Art Institute, you had
then I went to the Art Institute, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, you went to the Art Institute, and tell that story.
So I took classes. I took filmmaking with George Kuchar, great, fantastic, and I was in a couple of his movies, and I studied painting and printmaking, and one painting class I was doing this canvas and a men's dress shirt, and I painted them to match, and I was so excited. I thought, oh, this is fantastic, and I went, ta-da! And the teacher said, you didn't spend enough time. Go back and finish it. And I went, wrong. And I wrote for my final grade, I wrote a paper that said, painting is no longer a viable art. And I read it, and I said, painting is dead. And then, you know, hence 30 years later, 40 years later, now I'm still painting every day. So,
right.
You know, such is life.
So painting is alive and well.
Yeah.
And before you, or kind of, I guess, simultaneously, you got into a bunch of bands.
I did, and I am...
And we have this great picture of you with this, like, fro. That kind of seemed to me like the beginning of the New Wave moment.
And that photograph is probably from when I was 19 years old, which is fantastic because I have an 18-year-old daughter now, and it's like, wow, that's weird. But yeah, I moved to San Francisco when I was 19 and started palling around with some friends and had an art club called the Del Mar Art Club, and then went to the San Francisco Art Institute, and on the way started a band called the Pink Section, which...
So that was the first band you were in, was Pink Section.
Right,
and, I think
there's Pink Section, and that's me and Stephen Wymore and Carol Detweiler and Matthew Heckert. We were in that band.
And I saw you play in New York. Did you play at the Mud Club? No, wait.
We played at Haraz, was a big uptown club, and then we played at, I don't know, we toured a lot, so we did. And this is the Boy Clams. That's the inflatable Boy Clams. That's Carol Detweiler and Jojo Plantine and myself. And we had a hit in LA.
Whoa.
On Rodney on the Rock, and So we had a hit called I'm Sorry, and our little 45, a double 45, was selling for like $50 on eBay, and that was exciting, or is exciting. And,
wow.
And they're doing a re-release of Pink Section too, I think. I'm pretty sure of that.
So, and then you kind of segued back into art? Or
well, then I was in the band The Longshoremen too. And the whole time I was painting, and then, yeah, and simultaneously, I think Celebrity Portraits, this series that we're going to show, was before. No, it was after. Never mind. I take it back. It was after.
Yeah. I'll let you have that one.
Okay. All right. Good.
So then your first big kind of painting show was in 1980. I think I was living in San Francisco. I just graduated, and I went to the show.
Right.
And it was the Celebrity Portraits, and we have the invitation from the show. Can you talk about the Celebrity Portrait Show?
So I honestly forget the genesis of it, but I did 110 paintings with an accompanying postcard next to them, and I installed it together. And then I was in a gallery called Jet Wave. There's Gerald Ford, and then here's my picture of Gerald Ford. And I did 110 portraits from postcards, interpreted them, and then I also, for a week, was in the gallery painting who came in. So I'd take a photograph of them with a Polaroid, and I put those up as well. And I think I did about 100 portraits in the week.
So moving along, then what was your next?
Well, it's hard to remember, but I took that show to New York, and I showed it a little bit in New York, or I had a small show of it. And then I just did series, sort of like big works of, and
so you did like Signs and Vessels was a big show that you had. And for me, your work is very iconographic, or there's a lot of symbolism in a lot of your paintings. And in that Signs and Vessels show in 2003, that was at the Metropolitan Transportation Commission?
That's right, yeah.
I think you had the Texaco.
Oh, okay, there they are. And I did Gulf, Texaco, maybe Shell, maybe Esso, and I interpreted oil stations, and then I did the vessels as well.
And you had cars in the show too, I think.
That was a different one. That was called El Camino on El Camino.
Right.
Where I did a series of the car, the El Camino, on the El Camino. And right now I live right near the El Camino. And I love that it's called The Road, and the car was called The Road. And so I did that and showed that at Stanford. And
oh, wow.
So they're big. What I like about being a painter is you get to go deeply into a car. And I did a slow El Camino, like a really boxy, almost against force going this way, and red, fast El Camino going, you know, and so you got to interpret things. And then I did Orange Trucks and Underpants. That's a good story.
The titles are amazing, your show titles.
I like words. I like words. But Orange Trucks and Underpants is the good story of that. Is I put up paintings of these orange trucks and underpants. And the reason I thought about that, I was doing a mural in San Francisco, and I was driving every day, and I thought, I like polarities. I like the idea of what is the antithesis of building, sort of masculine building, and these orange trucks, the Caltrain trucks. And I thought, oh, the embarrassing underpant. And so I did paintings of almost like Calvin Klein's, like no breast or chest, but from the waist to the thigh of underpants, men's and women. And then I did these orange trucks kind of driving up 101. And I put them into Belmont City Hall, and someone filed a sexual harassment suit, or they threatened to, because they didn't like looking at the underpants.
Oh, that's funny.
And so I called the newspapers, as every good artist does, and the newspaper wrote a story that said, "Artist on display at City Hall, forced to drop underpants."
Oh, that's great.
Because I had to take the underpants out of there. So that was the byproduct of that.
That's a great story. Well, let's fast forward to what you're doing now.
Okay.
And I think we have a bunch of paintings, if you want to talk about your current show.
Okay. And do you want to do any lead-in, or do you want me to start?
No, you go ahead.
This is a series called A Few Vowels, O, U, and E. And that's the letter U. And O, U, and E is an ode to Emily. our mutual cousin who sadly passed away from HLH, autoimmune rapid disease, and she died suddenly, and she was a singer. And I lost my voice from a operation that I had to take out a nodule on my thyroid, and I talk all the time. So in reestablishing my voice, I was thinking about how language begins. And I was thinking about Emily and singing, and I turned it into an ode. O, you, Emily, O, U, and E. And then the other piece that I'm considering is, rather than objects, I'm sort of doing the line. I'm working on calligraphy, the stroke, the gesture. How much information can we contribute with just the gesture? And this is you bending that we're looking at right there. And it's the idea that with paint, as opposed to architecture, you can be fanciful about what you're showing. And I can show a piece of sort of material bending as if it's metal sort of splintering, breaking, or bonding, or something like that. And so you get to do all these things about layers and moving around. This is the letter U in cursive. And the idea that when we paint, and the thing that was very neat about this one was I was considering different rooms in a home. And each area, I was thinking, oh, in a home, we have a living area, we have a bathing area, eating area, and a sleeping area. So I took, and this is bonding, and I was considering how individuals meet. So what I found through working with this series is that you can really infuse your memory, your emotion, and a real specific sense of place, a specific emotion in the work. So that was what I've sort of been working on through this series.
It's a powerful body of work, Judy. And I mean, having seen you over a lifetime working on paintings, I really feel that this current body of work is the most powerful I've seen.
Well, thank you.
And I'm excited to see where else you go with it.
I'm working on more intimate paintings now that are kind of like smaller and, I don't know, more delicate maybe too. So we'll see where they go. Oh, directions, that's what I'm working on. North, east, up, down.
Wow, well, thank you so much for coming. That was a quick rundown of your whole life, and I look forward to seeing you back again for your next series.
Well, thank you for having me, Audrey.
It's always a pleasure.